We're now going to look at page 10 and we're going to look at strings subprograms. So one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to look at these particular values, starting with len, then how we find, and then index. So if we compare the bit of code in this example, you can see that I've got a simple string that's being saved into a variable called myString. And I've got a couple of other strings that will be related to later on. And what I want to do is I want to find, see if there is an O in this particular string. And then I want to find Z. Now, what it does, if you use the find, it will return the location where it is in the string if it finds that letter. But if it doesn't find anything at all, it will simply put in a -1. So at this particular point, I can see there's a 0 in there. Sorry, an O, but there's no Z. So what I'm expecting to happen, as you can see, is that I've printed out the word find, and then I'm just printing out where O is in that list. And you'll notice it says 3. This is because it starts counting at the first character in the string, but this is 0, then that is 1, that is 2, and then that is 3. Because computers will always start counting at 0. Now, at this particular point, you can see, and I'll just put this to the side so we can have them at the same time. You can see that it's trying to find Z, but because it couldn't find it in that string, it's brought back a -1. Now, okay, so the next thing we're going to have a quick little look at, and it says index. So the index returns the location in the original string, and if it doesn't find it, it will bring an exception. So we can see there's clearly a B in there, and what it's doing in this particular case, you can see that B is at position 4. But let's just change that to, let's say, a W, something that's not in there, and I'll run that program again. But what you'll probably find this time is it's actually brought back an error, and you can see that it's not actually found that. And as you can see in the notes, that's what we expect to happen. It will raise an exception and break the code if it can't find that within the string. And I'll just change that back to another letter, and I'll just put a capital B in there this time. And I'll run that program again. And as you can see there, it's found that particular index there. So now when I'm running this code again, let's compare the next lines of code. So we're going to just briefly jump to the next part, which is looking for the length. Now, what the length is basically doing, it will check the length of how many characters are in this string. Notice that will include spaces as well. And as you can see, I've just printed the length of the string out, or you could store that the length in a variable that you might want to use later on. But either way, I've printed them out twice, and you can see the length is actually 12. So we've done find, index, and string. The next thing we're going to look at is upper and lower. As you can see, well, I've just created a little variable called upper, and that's going to store this string, but it's going to convert it all into uppercase. And as you can see for the lower, which is printed here, it's converted everything into lowercase. You might want to use this to do tests. So whatever a person enters a bit of data, it just automatically converts it for you. Now we've got my string is upper and my string is lower. What this is currently doing, it's looking at the string and it's saying if all the characters in that string are all uppercase. And you can see it's not the case, so it's brought back false. But you'll also notice it's saying is lower. It's also brought back false. Now, what I'll do just to change this, I'm just going to change this so in this particular case, it's all got uppercase this time. So what I expect to happen at this particular point is I should see true and then false. Let's run it again. And as you can, well, one of the first problems is that it's looking for the letter B, which isn't there. So let's change that to a U. And if I run that again, and you can see that the characteristics is now, after we've got upper and lower, it's brought back with a true because it's checked and say, okay, this is all uppercase. And if I was to change it back again, it will be true or false depending on what is happening in the string. So let's run that code again. We've then got is alphanumeric, and is digit. Notice that all these particular points, they are all false. But what is that actually doing? It's doing a check to see, let's do the first one. So the first check that it's actually doing is it alpha? So let's check what is alpha. Returns true if all the characters are alphabetic from A to Z. Now, as you can see, we've actually got a full stop in there. So and a space. So it's not going to come back with true because it's got different characters in there. So what is alnum? Is alnum is going to return true if it has characters or numbers. And in this particular case, you can see that it has numbers and letters, but it does include a space and it does include a full stop. And when I run this code again, you can see that this time is all numbers came back as true because it doesn't have any spaces in there. It doesn't have any full stops or any other characters in there. And if I run that again, you can see it's back to false. So at this particular point, we're on to our is digit. And this is basically going to check if all the characters in that are all numbers between 0 and 9. We've then got our replace. So if we run the code again and see what actually happens, what this is doing is I want to print the string, but replace the string wherever it finds a B, I want to replace it with the letter Z. So as you can see there, it's looked and found that capital B and it's changed it to a Z and printed it out. You could do this in an alternative way. You don't necessarily have to print it out. You could store it in the same name, but just change it and replace it with all those particular letters. So the next step is looking at what split and strip do. You'll be using these when you're actually working with files. But let's have a little look at what would actually happen. And you'll notice that these are hashtagged out for the time being. I'm just going to put these right across the top underneath here so we can see what happens. So what does strip actually do? You'll notice that I've got a little space there right at the end. What strip does is it gets to the end of the line. And as you can see here, we'll just read the little notes there. So we've got split and we've got strip. So the difference between it, strip will strip any particular characters from there. So for example, any full stops, it will basically split this first bit of data into a list, then this bit of data into a list. Where this little part here, the split, which I've got just here, the split will split off, and in this case, I want to remove the full stop. But the strip will actually strip off any occurrences or anything at the end of that or the beginning of that line. And when I print these out, I'm just going to do that one first so you can see the difference. I'm going to run that code, and Bob Smith is there, but there are no spaces after it. Now, at this particular point, I want to actually remove and split anything within that string where there's a full stop. You'll use this with commas when you're using and working with files. So what I'm going to do this time, I'll call this mystring2. And what it's going to do, mystring2 is going to be a list. If you just remember that all lists have your square brackets normally. So this is going to create a list, and it's going to split this into a list, and then these, and separate them into two different parts. And as you can see, that once it's been split and the ends line off, I've created a new variable called mystring2, and whenever it's found a full stop, it's split the bits of the string into separate parts within a list. And that's everything covered in this particular part. And the next part we'll be looking at how you format strings. And within the coding folder, you will see, part of getting to know the PLS, you've got the format and list of string question there with a few videos on what to do.